What time do we have? Hopefully people will start to show.
using-
So everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Loud and clear,
excellent.
sir.
So I have 7:32, and I'm going to call to order Woodstock's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It's a special meeting for November 5th, 2020. I'll go through a couple of, actually got to do the roll call. So I'm just going to go through the names as I normally do. Let me know that you're here so we have it on the record. Joe Adaletta. I thought he was on.
He's muted.
He's having some connection problems.
Yeah,
I think.
he is, but he was on. There he is. Okay, but he is here. So, so we'll note that. Mark
He's
Blackmer.
muted.
Yeah, he says he's
Here.
having some technical stuff. Sid Blodgett. Gail Dickinson.
Here.
Nancy Frazier. Nancy's there. Jeff Gordon. I'm here. Jeff Marcotte.
Here.
David Morse.
Here.
Doug Porter.
Here.
Fred Rich. Just checking to see if he's here. Doesn't look like it. Okay. Dwight Reinowitz.
Present.
And Tim Young.
Here.
All right. I'm just going to quickly go through some meeting rules and guidelines for those who have been on these meetings before. This is what I've said before. If you're new, then this will be important stuff to note. Even though we're meeting by Zoom, we still are following the rules that we follow for our meetings, including the rules for public hearing. We ask that you keep yourself muted, so that way we don't get extraneous background noise when we have people talking. If you do wish to be recognized to speak, as chair, I'll recognize you. As is our norm, we only have one person who can speak at a time, and when we get to the public hearing, I'll remind people about the public hearing rules. If you do want to be recognized to speak, you can, there's a little button somewhere to, I guess, virtually wave your hand, or you can otherwise signal us. If you're by phone and want to let us know that you would like to speak, that is *9. I am going to note that Sid Blodgett just joined us. He's connecting on now, so he's here on the meeting. If you wanted to see a live transcript, you can go to the top of the Zoom. There's a red button that says live. And you can click it, and I guess it gives you a live transcript. I've not used it myself, but it is a feature that's available. Otherwise, as far as the chat feature, okay. Are we?
It might be somebody in the call.
Okay, so if we can just ask everybody, make certain you're muted, just because we are getting some audio feedback that's coming through. So we just want to make certain we can have everything clear. We're trying to make certain we can have the setup work as best as possible for us. Otherwise, the chat feature, is that on or off?
That is disabled.
So we had to disable the chat feature because of some issues with people using the chat feature at the last meeting. So I will note that the chat feature is disabled. So you'll note that if for some reason you want to use it, but again, the chat feature is not to be used if for some reason it pops back on, because we can't have side conversations and stuff. Otherwise, those are the meeting rules and guidelines. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. I have designation of alternates, and before I do that, I just want to make certain that we didn't miss Fred Rich trying to connect in. We're just going to see if he's on the list for some reason that we didn't see him.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey,
I made it in under Dawn's computer, under Dawn's name there. Joseph here.
Do you still want to be called Dawn, or do you want us to change your name?
I think she'd be embarrassed to have me called Dawn. So let's stick with Joseph.
Okay. See, you asked for it and we made it happen.
Terrific. Thank you.
And I don't see Fred on the call right now, so, okay. So he's not on. So as far as designation of alternates, we will need, because Fred's not here, we will need to seat an alternate for the time being. I've been keeping track of it all. And at the last meeting, I was going to start in alphabetical order, which is where we have gotten back to, but we didn't actually need to seat an alternate at the last meeting. So unless there's an objection, I'll go back to where we are at the beginning of the alphabet based upon the rotation that we've been doing, which would be Nancy Frazier. We would seat you, Nancy, if that's okay with you. Okay. So we'll note that Nancy is seated for the meeting. My chair's report is going to be very quick. My usual thank yous to all the commissioners and for the staff for everything that gets done and for attending meetings. I certainly do appreciate it. And also thank you to the members of the public who have been attending this public hearing. It's good to be getting public input on things and for the public to be aware of the work that we're doing for the community. The only other thing I have before I recognize Jeff Marcotte, who wanted to be recognized, is just remember we have a regular monthly meeting in 2 weeks. That's the 19th. If for some reason you can't attend, let me know, but otherwise the meeting agenda and stuff will go out accordingly to let you know where we stand with stuff. Other than that, Jeff Marcotte, you wanted to be recognized, so I'll go ahead and recognize you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Mr. Chairman, I would, I think that I would like to suggest or make a motion that we say the Pledge of Allegiance before we begin each meeting.
Okay, I personally am fine with saying a Pledge of Allegiance at a municipal meeting. I don't know if we need a motion to do it unless any commissioners have any issues or concerns about us doing the Pledge of Allegiance before our meetings. Although we wouldn't do it like the Board of Ed used to do. I don't know if they still do, where they used to have a student there that they recognize for some reason doing the pledge, and it was nice to see the students be recognized for various things at their meeting. But unless there's an objection from the commission, I will take it that we don't need a motion. Is this something, Jeff, you wanted to do the Pledge of Allegiance tonight for us?
Absolutely. I'll lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
I don't have a flag, and I don't have a background, but that's okay. We don't need, that's all right.
If you wanna do it
Yeah.
that way.
So, but probably if we can stay seated if we want in order to see each other, whatever we want to do. So, but Jeff, if you want to go ahead, please lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
Yeah.
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you bringing that up. We'll note that then.
Thank
We
you.
can we can do that for our meetings.
Fred Rich is joining.
And it looks like Fred just joined us. So Fred has joined us now. Which is before our public hearing is ready to start. And I believe then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2. So what that would mean is this is what happened at the last meeting is Nancy then, because Fred has joined us before the public hearing opens, he gets seated, which means we will note that you're not seated for the public hearing. But for all the alternates, as you know, you certainly can fully participate. All seating means is taking a vote or not when it comes to motions, but otherwise certainly fully participate and certainly encourage that. I have one more minute until we can open up the public hearing at 7:45. One question I just want to ask everyone, did anybody have any problems getting their meeting packet by mail for this meeting?
No, sir.
Okay. If for some reason you have been getting it, it's not any fault of town hall. Things do get sent out. Sometimes the mail can be a little slow. If that's the case and you felt you wanted to pick up your meeting packet at town hall, let Tina know.
Commissioner
And then
Gordon,
we can go accordingly. Yes.
could I just
Nancy?
say a special thank you to Tina LaJoy for dropping the packet off? So I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I have 7:45, so I'm going to open up the public hearing. So this is agenda item 5. This is number SP 6400424. This is ND Swati LLC doing business as Woodstock Country Store. This is a special permit modification of a prior special permit, SP 3969802 at 1484 Route 171. And just so that we all remember, we do need to wrap up the meeting by 10, where I'm located right now with staff. We do need to vacate by 10 if we can. This is the only agenda item tonight anyway, so we can go through things accordingly. I will remind members of the public that this is a continuation of a public hearing. So if there is something you wish to say or provide comment on, this is the opportunity. However, because it's a continuation of a public hearing, if you've already spoken and provided information, you can be recognized to speak again, provided there's something new you wish to provide. If you've already said something at the prior parts of this public hearing, the commission has already noted that it's already part of the public record. We do not necessarily have to enter it again. I am going to go through a few housekeeping items that I'm required to go through here. Just bear with me because we need to make certain things are noted on the record. So we have a number of documents that we've received. That we received before the deadline that's for the applicant and the applicant's representative. That was 4:30 p.m. on October 26th. And then documents we received from the public before the deadline of 4:30 p.m. on November 2nd. There were a couple of documents received by the applicant's representative after the deadline, and I'll note those, although those we could still enter into the record, but I'll get to that. Let me just go through a few things just to make certain we have this on the record. We have a revised site plan with the date of August 26th of this year. I will note that previously we have the property survey sheet EX-1 that was prior submitted to us. We have a revised traffic assessment as of July 9th of this year. We have design professional correspondence regarding the storm water drainage analysis. This was July 13th, 2020. We have design professionals correspondence of July 13th regarding Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency comments. We had wanted that in our record from the last meeting so that it's been entered. We have a letter dated July 23rd from Mark Adamek. We have that in the pile of public correspondence. We have a revised stormwater drainage analysis, August 10th. We have the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Agency approval letter of September 29th. The wetlands permit of August 3rd. We have an Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Agency meeting minutes of August 3rd. We have fire marshal plan review reports, the most recent being October 13th. We have correspondence with the town highway department foreman regarding input. We have letter from the Wyndham Water Works, October 14th. We have correspondence with the Department of Consumer Protection, Division of Liquor Control about gas stations selling beer, and that's dated October 14th. We have Design Professionals letter of October 14th. We have a memo from Delia Fay, October 15th, and correspondences to Burton Engineering, October 16th. We have a letter from Mark Adamek, October 26th. I do need to note for the record that relative to that letter, he is not technically listed in our file as a designated representative of the applicants or Burton Engineering, so that letter is entered in as just a letter from a member of the public. So it's clear on the record. We have a revised project description of October 26th. We have correspondence from Delia Fay to Burton Engineering. Some of this is, I think it's October 22nd, relative to reminding about deadlines of submitting documents. We have correspondence from Burton Engineering of October 26th. We have waiver requests, which I'll get into in a minute for the record. October 26th, we have design review, comment, and resolution form, 4 pages, October 26th. We have a memo from Delia Fay, October 29th. A letter from Rachel Donnell. This is November 2nd. Correspondence from Design Professionals of October 30th. We have a letter from Maggie Houlihan of November 2nd. There were some correspondence and information, 2 things that we received after the October 26th deadline from Burton Engineering. One is a correspondence clarifying a question we had from the last meeting where there was a design review, comment, and resolution form that made it sound like there were 4 pages, and the clarification that we got was it's only 3 pages. There was no 4th page. So unless anyone has any objection, I'm okay as chair having that in the record. And we did want a copy of this, even though it wasn't addressed to us. But last meeting, we wanted a copy of the design review, comment, and resolution form that was sent to Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Agency. And we did receive that, even though it's technically not to us as the commission, but it was to something relative to what that agency wanted. So unless there's an objection because it's a document we wanted to see what was sent to that agency, we can enter that into the record. I do need to make certain we have the waiver request clear on the record. We have received a number of waiver requests that when I went through the documents, I spent close to 5 hours yesterday trying to make certain that I could get some things in order and make heads and tails of the different things that are being requested. So this is what I have for waiver requests. We do have this in writing that came through as part of some correspondence in the updated project description. We do have correspondence asking about a potential waiver request, if it's applicable, regarding the front setback for the proposed gas pump canopy. This would be relative to basically the setbacks that are in provisions that are in Article 4, Section A, subsection 2, in the table that's attached to it. But it also gets into non-conforming structures and uses, which we'll get into a discussion a little bit later about, which is Article 4, Section A, subsection 3. That's a waiver request if it's felt that a waiver request is needed. There's a number of waiver requests relative to lighting regulations. One is Article 6, Section F, subsection 5, subsection A, item 2, regarding the number of lumens going beyond the property line on Barlow Cemetery Road exceeding 0.25 lumens. There's also a waiver request relative to exceeding the 10 lumen limit of lighting below a canopy. That's Article 6, Section F, subsection 4, subsection B, number 4. We also have a lighting waiver request regarding the total allowed lumens. There's a request to exceed what the regulations allow, and that is Article 6, Section F, subsection 4, subsection B, item 1. There's also a request relative to ornamental fixtures and potentially whether or not they're full cutoff or fully shielded or recessed. This is relative to Article 6, Section F, subsection 5, subsection B, items 1 and 2, as well as subsection 8, item 5. There was also a request, a possible request to waive the traffic study if it's felt to be needed to be waived. So that's a potential request if we feel a waiver is needed. That's Article 5, Section B, subsection 2, item P. Those are all the waiver requests that I found in the documents. There wasn't one document that itemized them, but there were throughout, especially the lighting stuff. Those are all the waiver requests that I've noted. So I just want to make certain that that's on the record. One thing that I also need to mention is that I'll remind the applicant, the applicant's representatives, to be careful about discussing any and all documents that we do not have, that have not yet been submitted. So potentially if there are such, and we haven't received them, we really are not able to get into those tonight, if there were to be any. And I want to make certain the commission is aware of where we stand relative to how much time we have. Right now, the executive orders that the governor has relative to extra time that we have to hold the public hearing, and then any post-public hearing discussion would expire on the 9th. And my understanding, I think Attorney Roberts is on the call. If you are, Rich, my understanding is those provisions have not yet been renewed by the governor?
That's correct.
Okay.
We're working on it.
So we just got to be mindful of that right now. So just so that we note for the record, right now, as far as how much time we have remaining to use for the governor's executive order time to continue this public hearing and any post-public hearing discussion, unless it's renewed, we only have 4 days, which is until the 9th. We have per state statute for continuation of the public hearing and or continuation of any post-public hearing discussion, we have 43 days per statute remaining. And we also have, I believe it's 65 days, Delia, that after we close the public hearing, base days within which to decide on an item, but then there's additional days that we have. So we just want to keep in mind as we're keeping track how much days we have relative to time limits that we face with regards to how long we can have the public hearing and how much time we have to discuss things and decide upon things after the public hearing. With that said, that's all the stuff I needed to put on the record. What I'm going to do to facilitate our discussion is I'm going to open it up right now to, what I'll do is let me open it up to the applicant or the applicant's representatives, if you wish, to let us know anything relative to updated documents that we've received. And then I'm going to open it up to the commission for comments, questions. And then I'll open it up to members of the public. So I don't know if the applicant or the applicant's representatives wish to speak. If you do, let me know and I'll recognize you. And I just ask, whenever someone's recognized, please state your name for the record, so because this is being recorded, so we want to make certain everything is clear on the audio visual. But thank you for coming tonight, Mr. Burton. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. And first, I'd like to apologize about the last meeting. We thought we had asked for it to be postponed, but however it happened, it was a mistake, and I apologize for that.
That's fine. No, we did indeed ask for that date, so that's why we held it. So
Yeah,
just state your full name for the record, please.
it's Callisto Burton, B-E-R-T-I-N. I'm the engineer, one of the engineers on the project for my firm. So you adequately described the documents that were submitted. On the site plan set that was submitted, the only really change was dealt with lighting, moving some fixtures and the intensity of the lights. I can go through that and we can discuss the waiver if you'd like to go through that. And then I know there were some other comments that we received from the various reports and minutes from meetings that I can just discuss too.
If you wanted to start with your lighting and waiver request, sure, and then we can
Sure.
see what the commission questions and comments. Please go ahead.
Sure. Okay. So just, and I don't think we really got into lighting on the prior meetings. We have three
We
types.
did actually, back in July, we did have discussion
okay.
about lighting.
So we have three types of lights. We have soffit lights under the building. We have a wraparound porch, so there's soffit lights there. Then we have the canopy lights, which are similar to soffit lights, just a little bit more intense. And then we have some wall lights. There's 4 lights, and then the area light. And I just want to talk about the yard light. It's a decorative fixture, but when choosing the light fixture for this property, we looked at the lights outside of Town Hall, and we picked a fixture that was identical to it. The only difference between the lights that we provided is that they are LED lights and they're meant to be cutoff lights. So instead of the bulb being in the middle of the fixture, you know, where the glass is, the LED lights are really in the top of the fixture shining down, but it looks like a lantern. Right? So we did reduce the intensity of the lighting. The average site lighting reduced, well, the overall lighting in the area we studied was 0.86 foot candles. Now it's 0.66 foot candles. But I want to go to the canopy where our first waiver request is. We use the smallest lights available for the canopy lighting. And so we were able to reduce the intensity of lighting underneath the canopy. We have the average lighting now is about 9.5 to 18.5. Now, I just want to explain the difficulty to get below 10 foot candles underneath the canopy is that the fixture is 15.5 feet, maybe 16 feet in the air, and we're shining down on the ground. And so you have to have something that's powerful enough to shine down. And so the intensity might be a little bit higher right where the light is, and then it tapers off. In the waiver request, we did cite the Illuminating Engineers Association, and that agency produces standards for all types of indoor and outdoor lighting. You know, everything from car dealerships to golf course driving ranges to offices and residential parking lots. And their lowest lighting recommendation, and this is based on competing light sources and the activities that are being performed, is actually 20 foot candles. That's their recommendation. We understand that you'd like to have it lighter. And this is for a service station where there's very little light competition. If we were on a highway with a lot of light around it, the average would be more like 60 foot candles. Anyway, we brought it down as much as we could with the lighting fixtures that were available to us, and they ranged underneath the canopy from 9.5 to peaks around 18, 17, again, underneath the lighting fixture. Okay. Now, we also tried to reposition the lights, the area lights, those are the lanterns, around the property so that we wouldn't have any spillover across the property line. And the limit, as you mentioned, is 0.25 foot candles. Well, the only place where we don't have it across a property line to a neighbor's residence or neighbor's property, but we do have a little spillage on the roadways. So on Somers Turnpike, we have a couple of lighting fixtures near the driveways, and we wanted to provide adequate lighting at the driveway. So we exceed the 0.25 foot candles by, at most a half a foot candle. It's kind of imperceivable, and those light intensities either fall on the driveway or fall on the landscaping. They don't actually get into the roadway. So if you want to look at a plan, I'm talking about drawing C 2.6, which is our lighting intensity plan.
I don't know if we're able to show that up on the screen at all. We'll try to call it up on the screen so people can see.
Okay. Yeah, or I can do it.
No, we'll take care of calling the documents up on our end.
Very good. So
It's a sheet C 2.6.
oh, there we go.
Should be the reason. the site plan somewhere. We have a lot of documents on the list. But if you want, while we're trying to call it up, if you want to go ahead,
Okay, I'll discuss it. Yeah.
please go ahead and we'll try to find it.
Okay, again, just at the driveways, right at the property line, it's like 0.4 foot candles. No, I don't even think we got up to 0.5. So it's a minimal spillover. And that's because we put a light between the two driveways. And when we're trying to illuminate the driveways, it's hard not to have any light spill across the property line onto the street. And this is well within DOT guidelines as far as light spillage, because again, it doesn't get onto the road. So we violate the 0.25 limit there. The next thing is at Barlow Cemetery Road, the lighting before we get to 0.25 actually kind of crosses the road there, but the lighting limits on Barlow Cemetery Road are less than a foot candle. So again, it's not a lot of light intensity. And it's at the driveway where you really want lighting. So we've asked for that waiver for the light to spill over. Again, it's only at the driveway locations where the driveways intersect the street. Otherwise, we comply with the 0.25 foot candle limit. The next was the amount of allowable lumens on the site. And there was a question asked in the planning review. We had a number for the finished developed area of 33,495 square feet. That represents the pavement. And it was brought to our attention that it should also represent landscaping and other areas where we've man-made disturbances. That would include, in this case, the detention basin behind the site and a little bit around the building. So I did a quick calculation and I came up to 55,200 square feet of disturbance. And what's the, I want to get the right term, of finished developed area. Although there may be more finished developed area, we're not disturbing it. Like there is more lawn on the right side of the building, but I didn't count that. I'm just the area that we disturb. So we have 55,200 square feet. We're allowed 1.25 lumens per square feet, which gives us an allowable of 69,000 square foot lumens. I double checked and I added up all the lumens for all the lights on the property, and we're at 59,478 or 59, I'm sorry, dyslexia, 95,478 lumens.
Can you just state that again? I just want to make certain that we have that in the record for what you're stating, just because I thought the number was different. You were proposing 106,152 in your waiver request. Is that the correct number for the record, or what's the correct number that you're requesting? The document you provided us states 106,152.
Well, I tell you what, I just calculated it before the meeting. I should have checked, and I can't get to the waiver request because it's on my computer here and it's blocked. Why don't we go with what's in the letter? Go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, wait,
Jeff.
before you speak, I will have to recognize you. Are you going with, I just want to make certain we're clear in the record. Are you going with what's in the document?
This is Callisto Burton. I'm asking my colleague, Stephen, to just comment on that since he submitted that document.
So I'll recognize you to speak if you could just state your name for the record.
Steve Peichel, Burton Engineering for the applicant. Okay, Mr. Gordon, I just wanted to make a correction, and this has to do with the October 29th letter, 2020, from Delia, and it's question number 1. And it's a question about impervious surface around the area and also developed area. The total disturbance area is 57,448 square feet. That's the total disturbance area. Now, if you do the multiplication like Mr. Burton was saying, which is 1.25 times the total disturbance area, which is 57,448 plus 4,500 lumens, that gives you a total lumens of 76,310. That's actually better than what we had initially, which was much smaller. And that would give us we are proposing 106,152 lumens. So that's actually better than what we had initially estimated, for the record.
So again, that 106,152 proposed lumens is indeed what you're proposing. I just want to make certain it's clear on the record.
Yes, Mr. Gordon.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Anyway, so that would take care of that request. You mentioned something about the ornamental fixtures, and I believe that they are, again, as I described the ornamental fixtures, they are meant to be again, we match the lights at the municipal building, and they are in effect cut-off lights because they do shine down. So that addresses our comments about lighting. If we want to resolve that issue, then we'll move on.
Sure, we can open it up to the commission. I just wanted to go through a couple of items just real quick, and then I'll open it up to everybody else. As far as going over the property line, you described it, because I highlighted the stuff on the map, the revised plans that you gave us. So I did note that. I'm just want to clarify a few things. The document that was submitted to us, which is about lighting, the October 26th, references the Illuminating Engineers Association, and it cites the 8th edition. If I'm correct, the 8th edition I thought was from the 1990s, and they are clearly, I believe, at least up to the 10th edition. And don't they have a lighting library now that they're now using for their regulations and standards, where they actually, you're citing needing to use at least 20 lumens, but according to their most recent documents, they talk about the average being 12.5 and a range of 10 to 15. But there's also comments in your document about the dark surroundings. And I know that the Illuminating Engineering Society has worked with the International Dark Sky Association. And one of the reasons we came up with the 1.25 lumens per square foot was, if you look at the dark sky documents, they do talk about rural locations having the 1.25 lumens per square foot in their document. And then they, so I just was wondering, has you're citing the 8th edition in your document, has that from the IES since, I guess, the 1990s, has that changed? What is the most current that the IES, if you're citing it, is recommending? Because some of the things I found on their website is a little bit different than the 20-foot candles under the canopy, and different from what the Dark Sky Association noted. And again, we did review a lot of stuff about lighting a number of years ago, especially when we dealt with what to do with canopies. So I just wanted to get some clarification, if I could, from you as far as what the most recent recommendations are from IES. And I've already cited the Dark Sky Association in collaboration with that organization.
Okay, well you mentioned, I guess you found the 10th edition, and I apologize, we had the 8th edition handy. And I didn't realize it was that old. But you said that an average of 12.5 and 10 to 15 foot candles underneath the canopy. We are 9.5 to 18 foot candles underneath the canopy. Okay. So we were as close as we can. And again, we tried to limit it. You know, if we put more light fixtures on, no, well, anyway, you'd almost have to have little spotlights underneath there. So we are very close to the 10 to 15. We're 9.5 to 18. And the average, where this is 12.5, it looks to me like it's in the 15 range as the average foot candle.
Okay, I just wanted to make certain there was clarification because I know those organizations have updated their documents, it sounds like, since the 8th edition, from what I was able to find on their websites. So I just wanted to make certain we had some things clarified about that.
Mhm.
So, and then one other thing you mentioned, and then I'll open it up to others who have questions or comments about lighting. The ornamental pictures that you said are similar to town hall. Town hall lighting is actually exempt from our regulations because it's a municipal use. But you said that those fixtures are full cutoff, so would be compliant with our regulations?
Yes,
Is that correct?
that's my yes.
Okay. So then you wouldn't be proposing a waiver request for that then?
Oh, correct. And I didn't mean to imply that because we picked a lamp that was similar to town hall, that we were, should get a waiver. I just said, that's what we looked for. When we designed the site, we wanted to be consistent. And,
Well, that's why I asked, because I just want to make certain we were clear on the record about what was being proposed, so that way there wouldn't be any confusion later. Is there anything from anybody else on the commission? Do any commissioners have any questions or comments about where we stand with the presentation on lighting and any of the waiver requests?
I do,
that
Jeff.
have been,
Dave Morse.
proposed? Yes, David, go ahead.
This lighting is for the full lighting that would be on from 5 to 9. What's the light at night when just security lights are on, or is this all the time?
thank you for bringing that up. This is Cleaster Burton again. I did not
Mr.
mention, when we have one night light, and it's on the right side of the building on the Barlow Cemetery Road side. And then for the resident in the back, we have a light that's on a motion sensor. So when someone comes in the back, the light will go on because it's right at the staircase. So we were trying to not have any lights on the site at night. So when the site's closed, the lights are off.
So there's no lights under the canopy?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
And in our
Any other commissioners?
letter, we said a half hour after closing, so it would be like 9:30. The lights. will be-
Okay. Anything else from commissioners relative to the light presentation and waivers for lighting?
I've got a couple, Jeff.
Sure, Joe, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick follow-up on the lighting. That means the lights would be on from 4:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. if you said half an hour before operating hours on both ends.
Correct.
Just
Mr.
okay.
Burton?
So 4:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. lights would be on the canopy and the building.
Correct. And
Oh.
one other thing we can do is the beauty of LED lights is that you can control them. And so I think in our waiver request, we would say we put them on at like 50% power. And then when the store opens, the lights will become 100% power. As a matter of fact, the night light that's on the south side of the building, when it's on at night, it will be at 50% power. That's noted on the plans.
I do want to comment that I am still a little disappointed in really the extent of the lighting that's still there. If I followed your discussion on the calculation of the disturbed area and what you're allowed versus what you're requesting, it sounded like your calculation determined you were allowed 69,000 lumens for the site based on our regulations, and the waiver you're looking for is to allow it to go as high as 106,000 lumens.
Yes,
I know you've reduced. I know you've reduced it, but it's still 50 to 60% higher than our regulations allow. And I think during the public hearing comments, there was a lot of concern about a brilliant spot in a relatively dark area. There are not competing businesses of lighted activity that would really require a significant amount of light to capture the attention of passerbys to this particular store. Jeff has pointed out rural lighting for gas stations can have a different requirement than inner city type lighting for gas stations, fueling stations. As I said, I'm still concerned about the extent of the lighting still being proposed. There are a couple of suggestions I have, Jeff, but I don't know if it may relate to the lighting in an indirect way, because I would still like to talk about reducing the number of fueling stations from 6 to 4, or the number of islands from 3 to 2, which could reduce the size of the canopy, which would reduce the overall lighting. But that may be a kind of a corollary to this particular discussion.
Dr. Gordon, for the applicant.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Just for the record, I just wanted to bring to light a correction of the previous speakers. We're actually, the allowed lumen is 76,310,
Okay,
and we are proposing 106,152 for the record.
okay, thank
Dr.
you.
Gordon.
Okay, and this is Callisto Burton again for the applicant.
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Burton.
Let me just discuss how we got to this. If we were doing a residential parking lot, ordinances would allow you to go down to a foot candle and sometimes a half a foot candle in a parking lot because there's not a lot of activity. And they just do it for people walking in safety. This is a facility that's a commercial facility. And although it's not on a highway location, I agree. We've kept the lighting on the pavement to pretty much under 2 foot candles. Maybe right underneath the light, we have more, but otherwise we've kept it to 2 foot candles or less, which is not a lot of light. But if it's really important, and we could try to drop the lighting, say on the right side or in front and the right side of the convenience store, to a foot candle or so. That would bring down the lumens a little bit there. And maybe in the back of the parking lot behind the canopy. But again, we've tried to keep it all under 2 foot candles, and without having the ordinance, from an engineering standpoint, I thought we did a pretty good job, but we didn't meet your ordinance. So, but we'll take your suggestions.
I was just wondering if there are ways to look at the canopy lighting, which I'm assuming will be the most brilliant out of all the lighting, because it's high in the canopy and trying to shine pretty brightly on the fuel dispensing stations. And just wondering if consideration could be given to using something like pole lights on the islands where the pumps are for downward lighting, that don't have to be 15 feet high and as brilliant, and maybe not have bright lights in the ceiling of the canopy. Just a different way of thinking about how to light or illuminate working areas that don't just rely on standard practices.
Yes, I understand. We only have 1 light on each lane. Many times we have 2 lights, but we only put 1 light on, and you really have to light both sides of the car, depending on how people are moving. So I don't know that we could do much to lower the lighting underneath the canopy, but I know we could probably lower the lighting in the parking lot, on the other drive aisles and where the cars are parked.
Mr. Chairman, for the applicant, Steve Peichel, Burton Engineering.
Yes, please go ahead.
If you could you do a screen share on page 2.4, please? That is the landscaping and lighting plan. And again, this is just to complement Mr. Burton's discussion with lighting. Certainly, we have a concern about safety coming in and out of the facility. And we want to make sure that people that are negotiating the turns and the corners, that the areas are illuminated such that they can reasonably see them. I think if we can get to that page, I can show you a little bit more detail on this. And if there's certainly, Yeah, if there's certainly a way that you could zoom into the Barlow Cemetery Road section and I could illustrate a point.
You're on the right plan.
We want, that's not two, we want C 2.4?
Correct.
2.4, please.
Yep. We're just trying to get to it here.
Oh, you had it. Back one.
Let's see if we can. Close, 2.5.
Scroll up.
There we go.
There you go.
There it is. And you wanted the Barlow Cemetery Road part?
Yeah, I think if you zoom in, yeah, if you could please. Very good. Now just to the right. Very good. Okay. So as you can see, there's corners there, and we've taken great pains to just, of course, keep the light within the site. But we've also put lighting strategically that we wanted to complement where the edges of the curbs are. So certainly we want for people to come in and negotiate the turns from Cemetery Barlow Road. We would need those curbs illuminated, and it's just a good safety precaution to make sure that even large vehicles can negotiate those turns. Then we've also actually, if you look at those lighting rings and you go by the state route, we've actually reduced levels out there. So I think certainly we are concerned about the lighting levels on the site, and we would certainly like to try to certainly complement the site a little bit better in terms of spill. But I think the thing, as any designer and engineer that looks at this, he has also a duty to just make sure that the safety of the site is paramount in the design. So we would look at the lighting levels, but we just don't want to negate what has been kind of carefully studied here to make sure that the negotiation of the curbs within the site end are also taken care of. So if you would, please take that into your consideration as well. Thank you.
And I just have one follow-up question to what Mr. Burton said. Mr. Burton, you had said that you may or may not look into ways of trying to decrease lighting in certain areas. If you were to do that, I'm assuming you'd have to create a new lighting plan, a new C 2.6 sheet?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not saying yes or no to do it. I just wanted to make certain that if something like, if there were to be a further change, that would be the sheet that would change then, as well as possibly, or may not be 2.4. Okay.
Okay, yes. And I mean, we could even, well, let's see how we go. And we were hoping that this might be our final hearing. That, you know, you could make a condition on like, for example, I said, maybe we can go from 1 point, I guess our average is like 1.5, put candles around the parking lot that, you know, we bring it down to 1, or have a minimum of 0.5 or 0.75 on the parking lot. Because 0.5 would be a residential parking lot.
Jeff,
Yes, Joe?
if I may, just to Mr. Burton, I think my point was that as I go by a lot of the Cumberland Farms and 7-Elevens and whatnot that have the convenience store and the fueling stations, rarely does my eye get caught by the pole light near their entrance and exit. It's really the canopy that is catching your eye with the most amount of light coming from that particular source. So I appreciate the concern about putting appropriate lighting on entrances and exits, and that does make sense. But I was trying to focus on the fueling station area, which really I suspect will be the most illuminated and visible portion of this site.
That is correct.
Does any other
Mr.
commissioners have
Mr.
any
Chairman,
other,
if I may.
Dwight? Yes, Dwight Weineritz, go ahead.
Yeah, with all due respect to Dr. Aguilera, my concerns under the canopy would be fueling at night, especially this time of the year when we have the clock changes. I think it's important to have illumination there when fueling vehicles for safety. That would be my only observation on this. That's a concern whenever anybody's filling it. So I do understand the lighting, you know, and especially at the entrances, at the exits, but also under the canopy for safety at night.
Any other commissioners have anything?
Yeah, I've
about?
had my hand up for a while, Jeff.
Oh, okay, sorry, I missed you. We're trying to go up and down the screen to see who there is. Gail, go ahead.
I've just got it. Our lighting regulations, as you know, we spent what, a year on them?
At least.
At least, yes. And they're there for a purpose, and I think they meet the standards, the most modern standards on lighting. But I also have a question about whether we can waive regulations like this. It's my understanding we can't waive zoning standards. We can waive requirements of our applications, but we can't waive standards in our zoning regulations.
Our lighting regulations have a provision to allow us to waive. I guess what I can do is, and I know when we've asked a prior town attorney, not our current town attorney, about it, I don't remember what we were told if we could or couldn't relative to that McKenzie court case. But I don't know if Attorney Roberts, if you're on the line, if you know anything more about relative to if we specifically have in our lighting regulations a provision with criteria to be met that we can waive aspects of the lighting regulations if that allows us to. We've never, I believe, done it before. But I don't know if that gives us the authority then to do it.
Yeah, I thought under McKenzie, even if we had put in a provision like that, it wasn't valid.
I think there's something popping up on my screen I'm trying to get rid of. I'm sorry. McKenzie has been interpreted and finessed by a couple subsequent cases. I think as a general rule, you know, you can waive kind of administrative requirements for what you need for an application. You know, and that's in your regulations already. With respect to substantive requirements, I think the current state of the law is that if your regulations authorize you to waive specific requirements and provide objectively verifiable standards that the applicant, the commission, and the public can look at to determine whether the criteria that would permit the waiver have been met or not, are permissible even in light of McKenzie. The problem with McKenzie was basically that there was a waiver that had no standards, criteria, or you know, benchmarks associated with it. So the theory was basically nobody would have any way of knowing what the regulations were just from looking at it, because the Planning and Zoning Commission could waive it. And the response from the court was, that's the Zoning Board of Appeals job. It's not the Planning and Zoning Commission's job. And, you know, that kind of set a lot of people's hair on fire. But I think subsequent decisions have backed up somewhat. And if your waiver provisions have criteria in them that can be applied to a particular application, then you're probably able to waive the requirements. I think it's around page 100 or 101 of your regulations. You know, in the lighting regulations, there are waiver provisions, and I think there are 6 or 7 different criteria that would have to be met, or 6 or 7 situations where the waiver could be granted, and then, you know, 5 or 6 conditions that the commission would have to find satisfied to be able to grant the waiver.
We actually do have very specific, we state you have to meet at least one of 5 reasons to move forward with the waiver request, then you have to meet 6 conditions. Actually, you have to meet 11 conditions to be granted a waiver. So we have very specific and detailed criteria that have to be met to waive an aspect of the lighting regulation. So from what you're saying, Rich, because our regulations have that, we could then legally use it to waive a part of the lighting regulations.
Yeah, I believe so. As long as you make the findings called for in your regulations. I mean, if, on the other hand, all they said is that, the Planning and Zoning Commission may waive any of these lighting regulations, for good cause shown, then I'd have real concerns about your ability to waive it. But I mean, if there are, basically objective verifiable criteria that have to be met in order to support the waiver, there isn't enough ambiguity about what the regulations require to have the waiver provisions be found invalid per se.
Does that answer your question, Gail?
Does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Was there anything else you had, Gail?
No, that was it.
Is there anybody else on the commission relative to the lighting?
Jeff, Fred Rich.
Yes, Fred, go ahead.
First of all, I want to agree with Dwight on what he's saying about lighting. I think under the gas, around the gas pumps is one of the places you want lit most because it's, let's face it, pumping gasoline can be dangerous. The other thing would be a comment about the number of pumps. I have to disagree with what Joe said because in the rush hours, and there's going to be rush hours there, like early morning when everybody's going to work or in the late afternoon when they're coming home, if you cut down the number of pumps, you're liable to have them lined up out into the road. Now, I've seen that down in the gas stations that he's talking about in Putnam. Going by there certain times of the day, they're lined up 5 and 6 deep. Whereas if you have another couple of pumps, you'll get them out of there faster. My only thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Anything else relative to lighting from the commission? Otherwise, we can continue to move forward with other aspects. Okay, I just want to make certain there isn't anyone who's from the commission trying to raise his or her hand. Okay.
Okay, if I may,
Mr. Burton, was there more you wanted to go through relative to the application or?
right, I just go to your point in the waiver request that we submitted. It does, section 8 of the ordinance section does talk about waivers. And I'll just repeat, it says, the following criteria will be considered when determining the appropriateness of a waiver. And the first one is traffic or other hazards will not be created. Our concern again was for traffic. The second item is general property values will be conserved. So you can make a decision if this lighting will impact property values. 3, and I'll give you, we're at 8B, and now I'm reading 1, 2, 3. No adverse effects on existing uses in the area will be created. 4, the general welfare and safety of the community will be served. And then 5, no adverse environmental impacts will be created. Number 6 deals with topography, which is not, oh, you got that right there. Okay.
We have it up on the screen, so if you want, you don't have to read it. We have it right up there.
There you go. Well, that's it. I was just reading that section. So
All right.
I just offer that. And if we want, we can move on to other items. Oh, just one last comment about lighting is that typically you're aware that they talk about the brightness of the lights and the heat, and they measure it in kelvins. And normally service stations are very bright lights would be 5,000 kelvins. So these lights that we're putting here are 3,000 kelvins, just to make it a little softer. Lighting. It's not as bright. It's not a bright white light. Anyway, that's the last comment on lighting.
if there's something further, well, Joe, did you have something about lighting?
Just because we talked about the fueling pumps, the number of stations, and Fred mentioned it, we can either talk about it now or later, but it might relate to lighting if the canopy overall size could be reduced. Because I did have time to look up some traffic studies from the Connecticut DOT just to look at traffic that they've monitored on 2 locations that I looked at, one in Woodstock Valley, where Connecticut DOT has it on their website for their traffic studies, and also on Route 171, just over the Putnam Woodstock line, very close to where that Extra Mart is, that has just 2 fueling stations, which can service 4 vehicles at a time. And some of the traffic studies for the Extra Mart, the Route 171 by Extra Mart, are upwards of 7,500 to 8,000 vehicles during the time they monitored it, versus about 2,000 or 2,500 at the Woodstock Valley section of Route 171 during the same time periods. So my sense is that 6 locations to service vehicles, to fuel vehicles, might be excessive for that particular road, given how the Extra Mart on Route 171 is able to adequately service vehicles that are in a much higher volume road area. It would also, I see on the design comment and resolution form that Burton Engineering was commenting about maybe queuing up if there were only 2 fueling stations versus 3. And in looking at their plans for the truck traffic in and out and their path for that on their maps, it looked like if vehicles drove in and followed what might be the path of the tractor trailer or fuel tanker truck, you could have 2 or 3 cars behind each fueling station, which would allow about a dozen vehicles queued up all behind the pumps in the same area that is shown on the drawings that allow tractor trailer trucks to come into the site, drive around the canopy to fill the fueling tanks. I'm just trying to look for the drawing number at the moment to confirm.
I think we have it up on the
That's
screen.
2.3.
At 2.3. So I saw the comment on that design resolution form that it may extend onto the state road, and be a little surprised to see that volume of traffic at any one time needing to utilize space going onto Route 171. If you envision where the trucks turn around, they then pull into the fueling stations, and the cars can be lined up one behind the other. The tractor trailer truck is equivalent to maybe 2 or 3 vehicles in length. Anyway, just a rough estimation looked like you could certainly allow up to a dozen, 15 cars in that back area available, waiting to queue up to be fueled. And that's not counting any of the other space around the island or the facility. So I wasn't quite sure that the volume of vehicles having to be fueled was really dramatic enough to warrant 3 stations, again, using a reference of the Extra Mart on Route 171, which just has 2 fueling stations. So that would, considering 2 fueling stations would allow the canopy itself physically to be smaller, fewer lights, and less activity there from a lighting perspective.
And Joe, if there's the stuff that you cited about whatever, I think it was DOT, if you have
Yes.
any documentation, we would want to certainly.
Be happy to send that to.
We can always receive it.
Yes.
But right now we don't have any way of getting it posted up and received right now. But if you wanted to send it to us, we can deal with that.
Okay.
As far as, so send to Tina what you have, so that way we can enter it into the record.
Will do.
Is there anything else relative to lighting from the commission? If not, if there's anything further you wanted to go with the application, Mr. Burton, or I can open it up for further discussion from the commission.
No, I think we can talk about the number of fueling positions
Okay.
now. I know we have
Sure, go ahead.
to go through. In the traffic assessment that we submitted, we did go to the DOT website since we can't do traffic counts, although Saturday traffic is back to normal, rush hour traffic is not. And we do cite in there that there are, in 2016, the DOT measured 2,300 vehicles per day passing the site. And we did a projection to up it to today's standards under normal circumstances. So it would be about 2,400 vehicles passing the site per day, which would be about 240 vehicles in each direction.
Yep.
Each hour. All right, so I'm just confirming it and it's already been submitted, so we don't have to wait for that.
Okay.
Yeah, so to make it easy for you. But here's the thing. You know, it just so happens that our firm designs a lot of service stations. In the 30 years or more, if we've done thousands, it's a conservative number. We very seldom do stations with less than 4 islands. Usually it's 4 square, 2 and 2. Sometimes it's 4 in a row. And to do 3 islands, again, it's very rare. And the only time we've done it is on sites where we can't fit a bigger canopy. So this site, we can fit a bigger canopy. We could actually fit 4 islands if we wanted to. But the applicant, our client, didn't think it was necessary, and nor did we in this area. So that's why we're at 3 islands. Now, you're right that we can queue a lot of cars should there be a need during the rush hour. The problem is the store is called a convenience store for a reason. And gas stations, when you look at the trip generation numbers, they really are bypass, they're convenience. In this case, it's a little less convenient because there aren't as many service stations. But if you've got 2 or 3 cars queued up, the customer's going. You lost that customer. He's going to go someplace else because why wait 10 or 15 minutes to get fuel when I could find it someplace else? So that's the reason. Although we do have room for queuing, again, customers aren't going to want to wait on a long queue. This is not voting. So anyway, three fueling islands is, I haven't done, I've got one other station in the last 2 years where we've done 3 fueling islands.
Well,
Because it's a
thank
truck
you.
stop, and we got the, so that's what it is. It's a
Thank you,
matter of,
Mr. Burton.
Yeah, and when you're a gas station design firm, you design gas stations to the maximum appropriate for the site. And, you know, we on the commission are also looking out for the town of Woodstock and the residents nearby, and having 3 or 4 or 6, you know, that might fit the site, but may not fit the town. And, you know, people driving by who, as you say, might just go past if they see a long line is kind of contradictory to the sense that, well, there aren't any other places to go other than this one, which would be new to our area. So it would still be convenient. And anyway, I keep advocating for the 2 fueling stations with servicing 4 vehicles at a time, and relate it back to the Extra Mart, which has the 2 fueling stations with a far higher traffic count than this Route 171 in Woodstock Valley. That's all I'm trying to highlight here.
Thank you, Joe. And
Mr.
just so I
Chairman.
can, 1 second, just so we're mindful of time, we'll try to facilitate us moving forward through the rest of the application. Did you have something new to add? I'll recognize you. Otherwise, we can move forward.
Yes, Steve Peichel for the applicant.
Yes, Mr. Peichel?
I would just like to address the question with regard to the sale of beer at the convenience store, if I may.
Yes, if you would like to, because that is an item relative to how you would handle what the Department of Consumer Protection regulations are relative to selling beer at gas stations. But yes, please, go ahead.
If I may cite for the record, this is a email that Delia had received on November 16th, 2011, from Jennifer Sturgeon, who is the liquor control officer for the area. And she cites section 30-20C of the Connecticut General Statutes. And what I would like to address specifically is section 30-51A, leasing part of the premises and operating under a grocery store permit.
If you can, I just want to clarify what you said. It's actually her email from Jennifer Sturgeon is October 14th, 2020.
But there is a later one too, sir. It was on November 16th,
The
2011.
2011 references a report that Jennifer Sturgeon cites. But yes, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, and I've spoke to the applicant about this. The goal of this kind of sale of alcohol at the proposed convenience station will actually create an LLC that will just manage the store sale of beer. And also, it will also dedicate a cash register that will be exclusively for the sale of beer at its gas station. So that would fulfill our leasing requirement of the statute that we're talking about. So that is an important point to address, and we would just like to enter that for the record, please.
Yes, we can do that. We'll enter that into the record. As far as moving forward, I'll move some things forward relative to entering some things further in the record. I note that we did receive input from the fire marshal and from the town highway foreman about being okay with the Barlow Cemetery Road driveway because the 1998 special permit did not allow such a driveway. And this modification is asking for it. And if I'm correct, Tina, the correspondence we have and the input we've gotten from their set review, including from the local fire chief, Chandler, is that they're okay with the proposed driveway. Yeah. So I just wanted to note that for the record. And I also wanted to note for the record that the E&S control bond design professionals have said they're okay with. And as far as our staff, you review this, you're okay with it. That's the 13,800. You did provide us a statement of how the application meets the special permit evaluation criteria. So we'll note that for the record. And I'll also note that design professional states that they're okay with the stormwater drainage analysis and the stormwater operation and maintenance manual, which is important things that we needed our engineers to say that they're okay with. And that we had asked for clarification for the number of parking spots, and the revised project description states 19. So we got that clarification. And I'm assuming in the project description in the very first paragraph where it says that in introduction, the finding and conclusions are based on the site plans prepared by Burton Engineering Associates, dated 4/6/20, that Mr. Burton, you're also including all of the revisions up through the August revisions on the site plan in this
Yes,
revised as well,
yes.
just so we have that on the record. And then the other, just to make certain we have on the record here, is if this came up at the last meeting, being mindful of our sign regulations, including signs with LED and any external signs that are internally lit as far as what we allow and what we don't allow in our sign regulations. There are those provisions. And then one thing I did want to ask, because I was reading through these documents, I just got to find the documents that Delia had provided to us. I have it here. In one of Delia's letters, actually design professional letter from October 14th makes a mention of a few items. And one was item number 15. This is design professionals, October 14th, saying, provide a T2 certification by land surveyor for topography. Comment remains. Is that something that has been addressed?
Mr. Chairman, for the applicant.
Mr. Pikel, yes?
That has been submitted, and our surveyor has stamped and certified that plan.
And we have a copy of it?
You had it actually on a previous submission.
And is that a Connecticut surveyor?
Yes, sir, it is.
Let me just see. This is what was called the property survey.
Existing conditions, I believe.
We'll just make certain we have it for the record.
It's
So this is the
2.0
one-
existing conditions plan.
And this
It
is
was
the one
stamped
that
by,
is-
it was stamped by Bruce Fitzpatrick. And his
Okay.
license number is there as a Connecticut
okay.
surveyor.
I just want to make certain that that comment's been addressed. And then our
Thank you,
engineer,
Mr.
also-
Chairman.
our engineer also made a comment, number 17. And it looks like that's been, it said here that, I don't know if this is applicable. Our engineer stated that shows sufficient sightlines for driveways. And then our engineer says it's been provided and then states sightline easements are required on abutting properties and should be provided if the application is approved. Delia, do you know if that's really something? I was trying to follow what our engineer was saying about why we would need sightlines on other properties if we already have. That's what I was going to comment upon, that if the sightlines are fine on the driveways onto the state highway onto Barlow Cemetery Road, that's usually we're then fine with it because those sightlines take things into account. So I just wanted to state that. And then also to note that the erosion and sediment control plan was signed off on by our engineer. And then the only other question I had, and then I'll leave it up for others if they had stuff, is, and Mr. Burton, correct me if I'm wrong, you provided us with a revised traffic assessment on July 9th, which our engineer is okay with. I didn't really see any substantive change in the July 9th revision compared to the June 5th. Was there any substantive change? All the numbers and tables and everything and substantive texts are the same. Was there something else revised on that July 9th, or was it just basically the same report, but just re-reviewed?
No, what we did was we added the accident data that was requested. So we looked up the DOT information on accident. And
So that I just wanted to make certain was on the record as far as what exactly was revised. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, to the applicant.
Mr. Michael?
We did just, we added this at a previous submission, but I just wanted to be complete in the submission and make sure that both the board and the chairman had the traffic assessment and it was current and entered into the record.
Yes, I had noted that at the start of the public hearing, that as a document. So it is part of our record. Yep. It is. I'll open it up to anything else further from the commission.
I have one more thing to add, if I may, Chairman.
Yes, please go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, with regard to the review at Barlow Cemetery Road and the discussion between John Navarro and Richard Barron. At first, there was discussion about limiting access to one way. And then upon discussion, both with Burton Engineering and both John Navarro and also Richard Barron, in terms of the apparatus that would be moving through there, and also they would pretty much use that entrance as they needed to if there was an event on the property. For example, if there was a fire to fight or if there was something going on at the pumps, they would pretty much use the turning angles. So they wouldn't really be affected by the two-way access. But even upon them further studying it, they realized that the totals and the amounts of traffic that occurred on Cemetery Barlow Road were so small that it wouldn't make sense. And they were in agreement that they should not limit it. So I just wanted to note that those reviews, initially they reflected at least some, let's say, differing points of view, but they resolved their differences and they both agreed that two-way access is necessary.
Thank you. Other commissioners, do you have any questions, comments on anything else? Joe, and then I'll see who else there is. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Jeff, you mentioned signage and lighting, and I just wanted to comment on the drawing 5.1. Just make sure I understand, because I did bring it up at our last meeting for the monument sign that identifies the building as the Woodstock Valley. There's a note on that sign that says digital price sign. And just want to make sure that the applicant or the representatives are aware that internally lit signs for digital pricing are also part of the prohibited regulations for internal lighting. So I didn't know if digital sign just meant digits that somebody puts out there, or if it meant some of the signs that you see nowadays of internally illuminated pricing on the signs.
Mr. Peichel or Mr. Burton, did you want to answer that?
Yes, this is Callisto Burton. The intent was that the sign would be illuminated from soffit lights above, but it's hard to have a digital light. It's not really internally illuminated, but it is illuminated. It's LED digits. It's not backlit sign. So yes, that's a digital sign with lighted numbers.
We mean LED digital, or numbers put up and the light comes down on top of it?
Yeah, well, we could do that. I don't know that that would work, because somehow you have to change the numbers, and you know, the only way to do it is with LED numbers. Otherwise, we'd have to go back to the old system and actually put the numbers up.
In which case, I'm just looking at our sign regulations. Joe, you're saying that that type of LED is prohibited.
Well, our regulations say it's prohibited.
And if that's the case, then if Mr. Burton, you're otherwise proposing something different, you would have to submit in writing a waiver request. Yes, under prohibition, all signs or electronic message boards with internal illumination, simulated internal illumination, flashing lights, neon, or LED shall be prohibited. So if you were wanting to have an LED price sign, then it would seem, based upon the regulations, that's not allowed. We don't have any criteria in our regulations to waive signing regulations.
Because of the way we are, I can't talk to my client because he's not here. He's miles away from me. But if the board were so inclined to act on this application, except for the sign, we would withdraw the LED sign. We'll come back when we figure out what kind of alternative we can provide. If you were inclined to move on the application, we'll just withdraw the sign, the LED sign.
Okay, well, that's something that will have to end up being discussed. It would have to be what you're planning to do. We can't take any vote during a public hearing. We would need to know during a public hearing what you're going to do about the sign. So if you're going to withdraw the sign as part of the public hearing, we need to know that during the public hearing. If you were to seek a waiver, well, actually, it doesn't look like we can waive that provision. Otherwise, if you were to do something different with the sign as part of the public hearing, we would need to know one way or the other during a public hearing.
If I understand this right, you cannot waive the sign. We'd have to get a variance for the sign or whatever and come back at another date. So rather than that, we'll just withdraw the LED sign, because this will delay the project months. and we've, you know, this has taken a long time. Not your fault. I'm just saying the process has taken a while. So I'm going to say that I don't want the tail to wag the dog. We'll withdraw the LED sign and we'll talk to the client about how we're going to handle this.
Okay. One thing to remember about variances, you have to prove it's a hardship not otherwise created by you. So you'd have to then see if a variance would even be allowed.
Mr. Chairman.
So let me finish. So I just want to make certain we're clear on the record during the public hearing, whichever way you wish to go. If you're formally asking to withdraw the sign, then that's the sign for the price of the
Yes.
fuel. Is that correct?
Yes, unless you talk to the client, he's saying something different. No, we'll withdraw the internally illuminated price sign. I would like to keep, if we can find a way to have a price sign that's not internally illuminated, I'd like to keep the same square footage, but no internal illumination, no digital, no LED signs. That would be withdrawn.
Mr. Pikel, is something you wanted to talk about relative to that? I just want to make certain the commission is understanding which is going. One second.
I
Go
just
ahead.
spoke with the applicant and he's willing to withdraw the sign.
Did you have something, Delia?
I thought the applicant was on this.
So for the purposes of this public hearing and application, then the sign for the price is withdrawn.
Correct.
Okay. That would mean then that any future sign you would have to come in for you'd have to get a separate permit for. It
Correct.
wouldn't then be bundled as part of this special permit.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can modify again. So I just want to make certain you're clear on that.
If I could interject, I think they still want to have the monument that says Valley Gas, Woodstock Valley Country Store, and probably the same overall dimensions as they have now. It sounds like they might just be retracting half of that signage that shows the gas prices and perhaps replace it with something else when they determine what that is, if I understand the commentary so far.
That's what I'm understanding. Is that correct, Mr. Burton?
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So then that would mean then that's withdrawn, no longer, that part's no longer part now of the application for our purposes of the public hearing. And at a future point, how you're going to handle that would require coming back.
That's fine.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make certain your applicant understands the process and the commission does. Is there anything else further from commissioners on any other part of this application? Want to make certain we can hear from everybody. I just want to make certain there isn't anybody we're missing on the commission who hasn't had a chance to speak or say anything. Trying to see if there is anybody. Anybody before I then open it up to the public? I'm just scrolling through the list just to make certain. Okay. So what I'll do is I have around 9:05, so we just need to be mindful of time. I'll open it up to the public. I'll recognize members of the public if you wish to speak. Again, if you've already spoken, then I'll recognize you only if you have something new to provide, not something you've already told us. If you're speaking for the first time, I'll give you 5 minutes. If you're speaking for a second time, I'll give you 2 minutes. Are there any members of the public who have not had a chance during this public hearing process, not just tonight, who wish to speak or ask a question?
Yes.
Please identify yourself. Yes, who is that?
Tom Pandolfi.
And Mr. Pandolfi, thank you for coming tonight. I don't believe you've spoken before during this public hearing.
No.
So I'll give you the 5 minutes. We're going to try to adhere to the timeline as strictly as we can, just to make certain we can give as many people an opportunity to talk. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. Would it be possible for the applicant to put up portable lighting so that it could simulate what the lighting would be? That's one question.
Yep, please continue.
I'm sorry?
Please continue.
And my other question is, has the planning and zoning members visited or plan to visit the site, being the scope of this project?
I'll mark that down as another question.
That's it.
Okay, well, thank you. As far as the question about, you're talking about lighting to try to simulate what it really would look like if this
Yes.
were to be finalized. I'll
Yes.
ask that to Mr. Burton or Mr. Pikel. You know, I'm not certain if that's feasible to do, especially since there's no canopy that's up, but the question was asked, so I'll have one of you answer if you feel you can.
I will. Yes, you're right. It's would be very difficult to simulate this with portable lighting.
Okay, and then The other question is about the site walk. I'll offer that up to commissioners. If commissioners feel they do need to site walk. I know from speaking for myself, I've been there a number of times to on the property as far as, you know, a customer of the store in the past. But I will open it up if commissioners feel they need a site walk, or it's not required, but I don't know how the commission feels. The question that was posed to us as a commission. Again, we're not taking a vote about what to do, but we haven't to date requested a need for a site walk. But I'll open it up to any commissioners who feel or wish to comment otherwise.
Dave Morse, I don't,
Yes,
I mean,
David?
I'm fairly familiar with the site. I don't think, and I know most of us, it's a small town, most of us drive by there or have been there and actually been in the store. I personally don't think we need a site walk.
Okay. Anything else from commissioners? Otherwise, I'll move forward. Yes, Joe?
Yeah, I would agree that the site walk may not be necessary. I've been there and familiar with the area.
Okay. Any other members of the public? Looks like we have a hand up. If you can just state your name for the record. I don't believe you've spoken before during the public hearing.
So are you talking to me right now? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe you've spoken before, so
Okay.
I believe this is your
No,
first time, but state your name for the record, please. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you. My name is Pamela Barber. I'm here with my husband, John Barber, and we had written a letter that we were not able to submit in time for the deadline to have it published online. But so I'll just read from that letter right now. It contains all of our thoughts on the project. To the Planning and Zoning Commission, we have been attending the public hearings on the subject of the modifications to the Woodstock Country Store in order to form an opinion on the project. Based on what we have heard and read in the documents pertaining to the project, we support the plans for the store itself with living quarters below, but do not support the current plans for the gas station. Our main objection to the gas station is its size and the impact a gas station of this size could have on the surrounding area. There is a big difference between a gas station like the Citgo station in Pomfret Center and the giant Cumberland Farm station seen on major roads. It's difficult for the average citizen looking at the project documents to tell where the proposed gas station falls size-wise between these two examples. But these are some of the concerns that we have. Number one, the height of the canopy and the number of lights it houses due to its large size would increase light pollution in the area compared to a lower, smaller canopy. We see from recent documents that the plans have been updated to reduce the lighting intensities. Any reduction is better, but this is not going to eliminate significant light pollution. The light pollution from the project will break up a large area that is currently dark and unpolluted by commercial lighting and will affect everyone within a certain radius of the project. Number two, the traffic assessment, which is not a full traffic study, seems to address only the estimated number of vehicles, but not the type of vehicle that will make up the traffic. We are concerned that the number of bays and the size of the canopy could increase traffic of large commercial vehicles that will find the location of the Woodstock Country Store more convenient than gas stations on other routes. A smaller facility would still draw plenty of business from local traffic without backups and with less likelihood of increasing large commercial vehicle traffic. Number three, there has clearly been an effort to address the issue of aesthetics, with attention given to the appearance of the building, canopy, and signage. But there is still concern that these efforts may not prevent the size of the gas station from detracting from the rural character of the surroundings, and that its size could set a precedent for other development in the area. We are only casually acquainted with the Swadia family as customers of the country store. They are very nice people who are always a pleasure to do business with. Their operation of the country store has provided a huge convenience to those of us who live in the area, with easy access to grocery staples, snacks, beer, ice, and lottery. We fully support their plans for the country store itself. We just feel that the gas station part of the project, as it currently stands, would not be in the best interest of all the residents in the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? let us know. We can take a look through the list and see if there's only, yes, if you can just identify yourself for the record. I don't believe you've spoken prior during the public hearing. You just have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Hello. So I'm Devorah Donnell. I live here on Witches Woods Lake. And I'm actually speaking because I'm actually a physician. So as a physician who lives here, my family lives here on Witches Woods Lake, I am extremely concerned about the idea of a gas station coming in across the street from two lakes, where there's a huge residential community and lots of families and children who live here. And so to me, it seems extremely short-sighted and really concerning to put a gas station surrounded by wetlands across the street from a residential lake community. So my biggest thing is that the health risks being near to a gas station, especially nowadays where we need to preserve our environment. There's so much environmental pollution going on, and this corner of Connecticut is the last little bit of area that's not polluted. And coming from Boston, I love coming out here because you can actually see the stars. So for me, the idea of now having light pollution and potentially having water pollution such that I may not ever want to have my kids or myself, being a child rearing female, in the lake is very concerning to me. So various things that I would like to point out as part of my concern is that the storage tank in the ground is going to have its vent pipe, which does emit some fumes. That does emit a big amount of benzene. Also, all the gasoline residue that's going to be on the ground. So with the number of vehicles coming by, the accidental spills that normally happen, but just the number of people that are going to be coming by and fueling throughout the day, there's going to be some gasoline residue on the ground. And then considering the topography, that rainwater is then going to allow that to wash down into the lake that's right across the street, which is Bungie Lake, which feeds Witches Woods Lake. And the problem is that when you think about the fact that this lake is used all summer long, all year round by families, little kids swimming in the lake, and the idea of gasoline potentially, even just a little bit, but the gasoline potentially getting into our lake where our kids are swimming, and I mean, it's extremely concerning, especially when you know that the benzene, it's a known carcinogen, and all the other chemicals that are in the gasoline. And if it were to also cause pollution of our wells, then our drinking water is also affected. And studies have shown that living near a gas station does have an elevated risk of childhood leukemia among children who live near gas stations. There's also a high association between living near a gas station and having poor pregnancy outcomes, like more defects and other birth issues, as well as the fact that the increased ground ozone levels from the fumes, the potential pollution, the chemicals, the car exhaust, all of that is also known to increase the risk of asthma and possible respiratory problems. A lot of states actually have requirements that the gas stations have to be a certain number of feet away from daycares, schools, things like that. But what I want to point out is that right across the street from where this proposed gas station is a huge bus stop that's actually covered, painted for Lake Bungie and all their kids. So you're literally going to have kids right across the street from a gas station every single morning and afternoon. And that is just not okay. Consider their health. And when you also think about the fact that this is not a commercial area, this is a residential area. This is a natural area where we have an ecosystem we have to protect. The light pollution can affect the animals and wildlife living in our area. It's a residential area. We want the quiet. Part of the reason why we all come here is for the quiet, the peacefulness, and we don't want to be attracting more vehicles, more music, more gas pollution, all of that stuff. That's exactly why we did not come here. And also the fact that as someone who's in her 30s, I'm aware that if I ever were to consider buying a place here and there was a gas station nearby, I would walk away. So it is going to hurt our resale values of our homes. So considering that this gas station will hurt the property values, can also potentially hurt our own health and especially the health of our children, and the fact that it can also hurt our environment, this is something that's not worth the risks. And our community needs to have a say. I respect all the work that you guys are putting into this, but I also think that our large community that lives on Witches Woods Lake and Bungie Lake, we need to have a say in this, because this affects our property values, our health, our ability to live and enjoy this lake and community so much that this is just not okay. Because personally, if the gas station had been here, me and my family, we would never have moved
Gonna
in.
ask you to,
We would
time-wise,
lose our
just to
property
wrap
value.
up. Thank
So
you.
I fully
Thank you.
recommend trying to not have the gas station part.
I'm just gonna,
We don't
thank
want
you. I will just state for the record that members of the public do have their say
Thank you very
through
much.
their elected planning and zoning commissioners, which is why we hold the public hearing and why state statutes enable and authorize planning and zoning commissions to do what they do and to hold these public hearings. So certainly we appreciate all the members of the public for participating and let us know their thoughts and concerns about any items that come before us. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? We're just scrolling through the list. Yes, but you've already spoken before during the public hearing. Do you have something new to provide us tonight?
Yeah,
Can you
well,
please-
yes,
you
I
have
do.
something- All right,
It's
then
not,
please state your name for the record. I just will note that we have to adhere to
Certainly.
the 2 minutes. Please
thank you
go
very
ahead.
much. Sandra Pandolfi. We also live on Witches Woods Lake. And I want to say a thank you to the 2 other people who've spoken. I am absolutely in agreement with their thoughts regarding the gas station. But I have another concern, and that's we reportedly have done some kind of traffic surveys, but I'm wondering if we've ever done a safety survey. The traffic on this road, people typically will go 50 to 60 miles an hour. A little on Labor Day, I believe it was, there was an accident that happened right here on 171. And by the way, the entrance to Indian Spring is only a half mile from the store, from the proposed gas station. So there was an accident. Someone pulled out of their driveway and was hit by an oncoming car. This past Monday morning at 7:30 in the morning, I was with a friend. We pulled out of Indian Spring, did a left, right, left look. And because of the poor visibility, a car almost hit us and had to swerve around us. So my concern is, in addition, by the way, to the comment regarding the school bus stop right across the street from this proposed large gas station, is the safety on the road in general. We've had multiple accidents on 171. You have a hill coming from the entrance on Indian Spring going towards the gas station. There's a hill and it's very difficult to see. So when the committee said they didn't need to make a site visit, I'm wondering if next time you all travel on that road, and several of you say that you travel it daily.
I'm just going to ask you to wrap up if you could, please, just for time.
Yeah, absolutely. If you would just drive that road and look at it from a safety perspective versus a traffic perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. There's others you have? Yeah, Mr. Roy, I don't believe you've spoken before. If you want.
Can you hear me?
Correct.
James Roy?
Yes, have you spoken before? I don't recognize that.
No,
you
I have not.
All
No,
right,
I have
well,
not.
All right, well, thank you for attending tonight. Just state your name for the record and please go ahead.
James Roy. So I'll keep my segment short and sweet. I'm a resident of Spring Hill Road. So as you know, I'm very close to the store. I've been a resident here for almost 8 years. I'd just like to say that I fully support the store and gas station. I visit the store almost on a daily basis. Very friendly to work with, very friendly staff throughout the store. It's just somebody trying to make a living, and like I said, I fully support it.
Thank you for coming tonight. I believe, who do we have next on the list? Rachel, we don't have a last name. If you can unmute yourself if you are unmuted.
Hi.
Where are you? Yes, have you spoken before?
Yes,
You have already spoken?
at another meeting a few months back.
Yeah, so do you have something new that you wish to provide us beyond what you've already provided to us?
Yes,
And
I do.
please go ahead. I'll give you 2 minutes. If you could just state your name for the record.
Yes, I am Rachel Donnell. And I would like to say that I thank Joseph for his comments. And I would like to know if the commissioners would possibly be able to come visit and see not just the area that's being proposed, but also to see how close the gas station would be to the lakes, Bungie Lake particularly. I would also like to have some information about how is the final decision going to be made? Is there going to be a referendum, and how would that referendum look, and how would decisions be made at the end? Thank you.
I'll answer the question about process. Planning and zoning matters do not go to referendum. I believe that's actually state statute. The reason they don't is state statutes enable people in the town, especially in Woodstock, to elect representatives to various boards, including planning and zoning commissions. And it's the Planning and Zoning Commission that follows processes and state statutes in making decisions, separate from anything that the state has to issue permits on, such as DEP has to weigh in about gas storage tanks and things like that that are outside of our purview. But these matters do not go to referendum. That's why there are planning and zoning commissions.
Okay, thank you. So basically, I would just like to also make the comment in terms of what Joseph said, that we are a community with 2,400 traffic vehicles going by, not the 7,500 that the Extra Mart has, and that there are no lines. I want to clarify that there are no lines that you see at that station. It sounded as if somebody was concerned about lines. If you only had 2 pumps or less than the proposed amount, that has more traffic there on an Extra Mart, and they don't have lines. So I would not think that's a consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. Is there anybody else from the public? We'll scroll the list and see if there's anyone who's virtually raised his or her hand. Look here. We're not seeing any virtual hands on that list. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak? Okay. Is there anything further from the commission? I just have one question for Mr. Burton, and it gets to process. And I know we talked about lighting before. I just want to make certain we have it clear for where we are in the process. Are you planning to submit a revised lighting sheet, or are you going with the lighting sheet as submitted to us as of the last revision? I'm not saying one way or the other. I just want to know from a process if that is indeed the sheet that we're going with.
I guess I need some clarification. We'd like to proceed with the application as submitted. And I don't know if you're allowed to put a condition on it to modify something that we can comply with later. We gave the reasons why we have the lighting the way it is, and go with it as submitted. I guess you can deny the waiver and then we'd have to come back.
Yes, from a process point of view, we can't put a condition on to say, come back with the revised plan, because we would have to see the plan during the public hearing. A revised plan then would have to go through a new modification public hearing.
Correct.
That's why I'm asking from a process point of view. If you're going with the proposal as is, then that's fine. We will deal with it and deal with the waiver requests, which have to be voted upon after we're done with the public hearing. If you are planning to revise any of the plan, then the public hearing has to be continued so we can receive that new sheet. I just want to know from a process point of view. I'm not advocating one way or the other. I just want to make certain we were clear what way you were planning to. And if you're not planning to, that's fine. We're clear on the process.
Right. Unless Stephen tells me that our client says otherwise, I think we'd like to proceed with the plan that we've submitted. Okay?
Okay.
He's not telling me otherwise. I don't know, maybe I'd like to respond just to a little bit about the environmental questions
And then Nancy.
without getting into a long conversation, if allowed.
Sure, please, go ahead.
Okay. There were a couple of comments made, and I just want to educate the public. I think we talked about environmental constraints or environmental safeguards on the site. The vent has a valve on top. It's a pressure relief valve. The valve is to let air in, not to let vapors out. So vapors don't emit from the fueling station or from the tanks. And even the vapors that would come out of the truck when the delivery truck comes, as the fuel drops into the tank, because the delivery truck is sealed, so it creates a vacuum as the liquid level drops, right? Because you're now creating a vacuum. It's hooked up to the truck and it sucks the vapors back into the truck. And then that truck goes back to the terminal and they take the vapors out and create a couple gallons of gas. It's called stage 1 vapor recovery. That's been a rule for 20 years or more. So we don't admit vapors at the service station. With regard to drops and drips that might happen, yes, that could happen. We talked about the fact that there's a positive limiting barrier around the station, around the island, so that if there is some drips, and usually it is just drops, it's not a gallon of gasoline, right? That could come on the surface, on the pavement. It usually evaporates, so that you could have some petroleum vapors from that, but it's very minor. And we have a canopy over the islands so that the rainwater doesn't come down on the islands and wash it away. So that's part of the design. But on this site, which is not a standard requirement, we actually put an oil water separator on our surface drainage. So as the drainage collects into the inlet at the back of the site, we have an oil water separator to capture any hydrocarbons that might be in the water, in the rainwater, before it goes into our detention basin, which is another means to trap water. And as far as leaks, it was 1998 that the federal regulation said all tanks shall be double walled. And then the rules evolved since then, where we have double wall piping, double wall tanks. We have sumps underneath the dispensers to capture product. So there's really no way, unless something catastrophic happens, that petroleum can leave the confined space and enter the environment. And there's a lot of monitoring systems in the system. We have, in that, I said the tanks are double wall, so there's a monitor in that interstitial space for the tanks, and there's a monitor for the interstitial space for the piping. This is pressurized piping. There's also a pressure monitor that will sense if the pressure drops, that means there might be a leak in the pipe. And it'll check if there's water leaking into the pipe from the outside, or there's gasoline leaking from the inner wall to the interstitial space. So there's a lot of safeguards that have been put on these sites. And these sites are inspected on a really a 3-year basis by the state. And our clients have to, the operators have to have all their paperwork and all their safety procedures aligned. They also have regular people who come in and regularly maintain on an annual basis the leak detection apparatus. Just as an anecdotal point, we have an environmental group, and because we do so much service station design, we got involved in the cleanup. Well, we have specialty equipment for cleaning up spills, and our lease is coming up on one of these pieces of equipment, and there's so little work now, we're going to turn it in. So since the regulations have come out, there have been very few leaks from underground storage tanks, not like it was before these regulations came into effect. So
Thank you, Mr.
not that I'm
Burton.
saying there's never going to be a leak. I just want to allay the fears of the public about the environmental risks.
Thank you. I believe Nancy Fraser, you wanted to speak. Did I see your hand up?
No, actually, that was, I'm all set. That answered. So I'm good.
And one of the other things I wanted to mention, we mentioned this earlier in the meeting, is when it comes to the the lakes and wetlands, that actually gets into the jurisdiction of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency in town. They held a public hearing, a series of meetings, and they did issue their approval on August 3rd for this project. So I just wanted to make that on the record as far as a process relative to the wetlands, watercourses, and water bodies in our town. That is under, that gets reviewed by another town agency, and then we wait to get that report. And indeed, the IWWA did issue their report, and we do have it. So that actually was looked at in detail also by that agency with regards to those concerns, and we rely upon their expertise in their jurisdiction for that. Mr. Leibowitz, I think you have your hand up. Have you spoken before? I don't.
No,
think
this
you
is
have.
actually Laurel Leibowitz.
Oh,
and
okay. I don't believe you've spoken before, so.
I
thank
have
you
not
for
spoken
coming.
before.
But go ahead.
You actually just answered one of my questions. I was going to ask if the Wetlands Committee had been consulted and if real consideration has been given to this project, seeing that it is so adjacent to the lake areas. I share Dr. Donnell's concerns about the health effects of any gas leakage. I also share the true disappointment to think that our skies and our beautiful nature will be disturbed. I just think this is the quiet corner. This is the quiet space, and additional traffic, additional trucks, and very large lighting are real concerning to affect the quality of life that we live here.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public? It's 9:35, so I just want to be mindful of our time constraints
Yes, this
tonight.
is Stephen Leibowitz.
Yes, please go ahead. I don't believe you've spoken before, so go ahead.
I have one question. The Extra Mart everybody was talking about is not in Woodstock, correct? It's in Putnam on the border. There's the town line and it's in Putnam. So is there a particular reason why nowhere within Woodstock's boundaries there's ever been a gas station approved? And has anyone ever come forth anywhere in Woodstock and tried to put in a gas station? Because my understanding is there's no gas station within the boundaries of Woodstock. And there's a lot of commercial areas in Woodstock that would probably be better served to put a gas station.
Technically, that Extra Mart is in Thompson, not Putnam. That's a little sliver of Thompson that juts in, I believe. And Woodstock actually does have a history of previously having gas stations. I think even before zoning went into effect. Historically, there had been some gas stations around town. So that Woodstock does have technically a history of having had gas stations and a number of automobile service locations. But Fred, you had, is that you? Yeah, that's Fred. Fred, you had a comment or a question, Fred Rich? Go ahead.
Just in as much as I probably lived here longer than anybody else that's on this meeting tonight. When we came here, there was 5 gas stations in town, if anybody's interested. One was just down the road from the proposed gas station today.
Okay. I'm just looking at the list. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? We're just going through the list. Okay. Maggie, I don't have your last name. Have you spoken before during our meetings?
Yes, I spoke at one of the earlier meetings. My
Do you
name is
have
Matt.
anything? Do you have anything new that you would provide us in speaking tonight?
I just had 2 comments.
Are they new
noticed-
information for us?
Well, just a comment. I did notice Mr. Burton.
I just do need to ask though, is it something new that you're going to be asking us tonight?
It's something new from my perspective, yes.
Okay, then please go ahead.
I just noticed that Mr. Burton, was smiling and laughing when we're talking about how to keep our water safe and our neighborhood safe. This is an important issue to all of us who live there. And I guess some of the things that concern me are the lighting issues that were talked about earlier in the meeting, and the light that's going to be spilling onto Barlow Cemetery. It's not Cemetery Barlow Road. This is a road in our neighborhood but there's a house right there. That's somebody's home. You're gonna have light spilling into their yards. And there's a house right across from the entrance to this store. There's another house. This is a neighborhood. So the lighting is a very big concern. And a lot of people were on the meeting, the last meeting, that may not have been able to make it this evening, but there was no representative for this project. So I know you're trying to fit all these comments into this time frame, but there's probably more questions out there, and this is going to have a detrimental impact on the entire neighborhood. So I personally, and our family, is against the gas station completely, but the size of this should be reduced.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just trying to take a look. Why do we have?
Why does it
Tell
say
him that you
lower
just-
hand?
Because you raised your hand. Tell him you just have one question.
No, please, no side comments. I'm going to ask everybody to go on mute, or we're going to mute you all. We just really can't be having additional discussions during the public hearing. We have Rachel. Who is that? There's no last name.
Jill Donnell.
Yes, you've already spoken, so
Right.
I'm going to have to hold on having you speak again right now.
I just wanted to ask.
I'm going to have to hold right now because you've already spoken. I need to make certain that that nobody else has not yet spoken who wishes to speak for the first time, following the rules of the public hearing. This is an additional call. If there's any other members of the public who do wish to speak, who haven't had a chance to speak, we're just going up and down the list to see if anybody has identified themselves. Let's just see if there is. I'm not seeing anybody else that's identifying themselves. Mrs. Donnell, do you have something new that you wish to provide? I'll give you 1 minute.
Oh, of course.
Do you have something new?
Yeah, well, somebody was just talking about that there was 5 gas stations in Woodstock. So the question I have is, obviously that's not the case now. So maybe we could get some idea as to why is that so that they're not in existence anymore? Or is it
Thank
no
you.
need? Or is it because there's no need, or whatever the story is?
Thank you. Fred, did you want to speak to that? Since you would
Just a
speak
little
to-
bit of history. Of course, all the people that owned them before died. One was in the center of North Woodstock. One was in the center of West Woodstock, just down past by the post office used to be in West Woodstock. There was 2 in South Woodstock that I know of. Mason's where the little store is there now. And there was another one down the road a few hundred yards where they used to repair cars. But there were several in town, but those families have all died off, and I guess they just couldn't make a living at it, that's all. And if this gentleman wants to try, I think it's up to him.
Do we have anything from other members of the public? While we're scrolling up and down to see if there's anybody further, we're trying to give as much opportunity as we can. And we've been doing that since we opened up this public hearing back in mid-July. Anything further from commissioners?
Yes, Jeff, I'll just ask, if we end up closing the public hearing tonight, the applicant's aware that any changes to drawings or plans would have to go through another process?
Mr. Burton, you're aware of the process we have to follow with what happens when we close the public hearing?
That's correct.
Okay, and that is a good point, Joe. Once we close a public hearing, we're not receiving anything new. Anything subsequent that wants to be done has to now then go through a renewed process or a new modification process. And that's why we've been taking great pains to make certain we could be having these public hearings and working certainly with the applicant. I know there's been a number of extension requests and one storm that blew out the power, so we couldn't have meetings. So we have been trying to make certain we're giving full opportunities as best as we can, mindful of the statutory limitations we have for the number of days we can keep things open. I'll ask if this is a last call for anyone right now who wishes to speak, who has not had a chance to speak.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question.
Yes, Gail, go ahead.
how
We're just
far
going through this.
the proposed gas station from the lakes? It's my impression it's blocks and blocks away, but do we know exactly how far it is?
I do not, know. Do you happen to know, Gina?
Actually, I happen to know. I just did
David.
while they were talking about it, I did a thing on Google Earth.
Oh,
and
okay.
They can measure distances. So about 1,300 feet to the closest point on Lake Bungie. And then it's farther, all the other lakes are farther away from that. So, or no, 1,700 feet, about 3/10 of a mile. A little
Okay.
over 3/10 of a mile, 1,700 feet.
And that answered your question, Gail?
Yes, that answers my question.
Okay. Is there, we're not finding anybody else who wishes to speak. One thing I'll ask from a process point of view, Mr. Peichel and Mr. Burton, are there any pending or additional documents you're looking to submit to us? Otherwise, all the documents we have received are the documents that you've wanted to submit to us, and there's nothing pending that you're thinking of additionally giving us. I just want to make certain we're giving that opportunity.
No, we've made our submissions. There's nothing more to submit.
Okay, all right. And my understanding is there's nothing further from our town engineer. Is that correct, Delia? I believe our town engineer has told us that she's done her reviews and her reviews are complete and her questions were all addressed and answered in her review. Am I understanding Tina's Inland Wetlands having given their approval? They're all set and done with, and they've had everything addressed and they granted their approval. So, okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, who?
it's Mark Blackmore.
Mark, yes, please, go ahead, Mark.
Just guess it's a question to Mr. Burton, but on the signage, we discussed we could not have the illuminated pricing on the sign. So he was pulling that part from this, but is it still going to have a sign for showing pricing that is not illuminated? Is that included?
Mr. Burton?
Well, yes, I guess what we'll do is we'll remove the illumination. There was a time when we had digital prices go, or not digital, manual pricing going up. We'll work that out with the client, but we were withdrawing the digital price sign. And the intent would be that it would be a non-illuminated price sign or non-internally illuminated price sign.
Okay. So does that answer your question, Mark?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. This is our time to make certain we have everything clear on the record for the public hearing. Is there anything further then? I'll just make a quick little comment. I know one of the members of the public is a doctor and spoke, and we have two doctors on the commission. I just want to call out my colleague, Dr. Dickinson, and I, who we don't necessarily refer to ourselves as doctors on the since we're commissioners when we're here, but we do appreciate. Is there anything else? Because we're not seeing anybody else who wishes to speak.
I'm sure
Delia, you
Dr.
have
Donnell was
something?
aware I'm a doctor.
Yes, yeah. I just want to make certain other people know
Totally aware.
that we have two doctors on the commission. So, although Gail and I don't work in
I
the
believe
same.
Delia was waving.
Yep, go ahead, Delia.
I was thinking that it was brought up.
You need to unmute yourself.
I don't want to be back, maybe we should just shout. I'm just
Can you hear? Then
Can you hear me? I was just thinking that, does the commission want me to see if I can measure how close the gas station is to that bus stop that was brought up?
from a commission point of view, if we do that, we're going to need to continue the public hearing.
We could do it now online.
If you wanted to do that, how are you going to,
Google.
you have the info?
All
All right, well, Delia will look up that info
Just need a couple minutes.
and then she can let us know to answer that question then. So, is there anything further from commissioners? Okay, well, Delia is looking up that info then for us. So we'll give her a couple of minutes from that. I'm just going to look at my notes to make certain, from a process point of view, we've addressed everything that we needed to put into the record. It looks like we did note all the different stuff, so I don't have anything additional. So And while Deirdre's looking it up, I just want to make certain members of the public understand that whenever we close this public hearing, we can't receive any further input from the public per rules. So one last call from members of the public who haven't had a chance to speak yet. I will note for the record that all the correspondence from members of the public, that there is a stack of it that we've been receiving all these months, has been entered into the record, and commissioners have received all copies of all correspondence from the public. So if you have submitted something, whether you're here or not tonight, all of that has been made part of the record and we have reviewed it. All right.
Jeff, Delia,
Yeah.
I got about 300 feet.
Is that what you got, David?
I have
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Delia hasn't yet pulled it up, but if you've been quicker to the draw, so you have around 300 feet.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll note that for the record.
Jeff,
Yes, Joe?
I just have one quick question for Mr. Burton, just since he's so familiar with all rules and regulations, just out of curiosity, is there any regulation that requires some financing for discontinuing a gas station? You know, it's a pretty costly effort to dig up gas tanks and remediation and all of that stuff. Is there anything like that in regulations?
No, not that I'm aware of about removing it, but there are insurance requirements should there be.
Okay.
They have to have carry insurance.
Okay, thank you.
Does DEEP in Connecticut have rules about what to do when the gas stations are closed and tanks sit in the ground and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. When a station is closed, you have a year to do something or pull the tanks.
And I will note for the record, again, we stated this earlier, DEP has separate jurisdiction. So anything that DEP wants now or anytime, they don't come to the town and ask. They're going to go to the gas station owner and let them know what needs to be done at any particular time. And having skimmed through some of their books on regulations on gas stations and gas tanks and things like that, they have huge numbers of regulations. That's outside of the town jurisdiction. That's purely the state. And if I'm correct, Mr. Burton, does the EPA, the federal government, weigh in as well with additional jurisdiction, or they leave that up to the state?
Well, the federal government came out first with regulations and then states adopted similar regulations. And that's how it happened with Connecticut.
Okay.
And then they have their own regulations that were not addressed in the DEP regulations.
Well, Jeff, if you're not seeing any more questions from the public,
well,
then
there's one more. Dr. Donnell, do you have something new you're going to provide to us?
Yes, I just had one other question.
Yep, please go ahead.
Thanks. So one other part I want to point out is that while we were talking about the number of cars that pass by where the gas station would be, I also want to encourage people to think about when you're coming from Putnam, that the gas station will be located on a curve. And that is an area that just when you're coming from the Putnam direction, it is pretty much like a blind spot. Like it's pretty hard, it's quite a curve. And especially when you think about slow moving vehicles going in and out of the gas station, that just in terms of the traffic concerns, in terms of the safety. So I would just encourage if people could visit that area and just look at the curve when you're driving from the Putnam and think about the gas station and slow vehicles being on that curve. And also about when we were talking about the number of feet that the gas station is from the lake, just also pointing out that it's downhill and also that Bungie feeds all the water into Witch's Woods. So if Bungie ever gets polluted, Witch's Woods is screwed. So, and then what happens to our property value? So thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're not seeing anybody else. We'll just scroll one last time. So at this point then, one last call to the applicant's representatives, Mr. Burton, Mr. Peichel. Is there any last new item you wish to present to us? Otherwise, Gail has her hand up. I'll recognize her.
No, nothing new.
Mr. Peichel, anything from you? Anything last? Otherwise, okay. Gail, you had something or you wish to do something?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's any plans for electric vehicle charging stations there, since I think over the next 10 to 15 years, gas stations will be obsolete and charging stations will be what we need.
Mr. Burton?
That is a very good point. And we can add a charging station on the left side of the building. I don't know if we need to have that, if that's something the board requires, we can agree to it now, but we have the ability to add charging station to the side of the building.
And if you do at some future point want to do it, you'd have to then, I imagine, do a modification. Yep, you'd have to do another modification of the special permit later, if that's something you decide at a later time. Any
No,
last thing?
I'm not sure that Sweet Evelina's had a modification of their special permit in order to put in their charging stations. They have 2 charging stations at Sweet Evelina's.
I don't think they have a special permit.
Predates zoning around 100 years.
Yeah, I don't think they have a special permit. Delia, do they have a special permit?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, maybe they don't predate zoning by 100 years, but many, many decades. They've had a retail commercial use on that property.
So that's probably why they didn't have to go through the special permit modification then. Okay. At this point, what is the wish of the commission? Our options at this point are to continue the public hearing or to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing since you're not hearing any other comments from folks.
Is there a second?
Second?
Who seconded that? I didn't hear. Was that you, Mark?
Yes, Mark Blackburn.
So motion by Joe Adaletta, seconded by Mark Blackmer to close the public hearing. Let me just write this down. I'll go, is there any discussion on from the commission on the motion on the table? Hearing none, I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta?
Aye.
Mark Blackmer?
Aye.
Sid Blodgett?
Aye.
Gail Dickinson?
Aye.
Jeff Gordon? Aye. Jeff Marcotte?
Aye.
David Morse?
Aye.
Fred Rich?
Aye.
And let's see, did I miss someone here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Aye.
Yep, Tim Young, I'm sorry. You were at the very edge of my paper. I missed it. So Tim, aye. So that passes unanimously. The public hearing is closed. That takes us then to agenda item 6, which is old business. I won't read the whole thing. It's the gas station, special permit modification. Because it's basically at this point, a few minutes before 10, I'm not certain we're going to be able to go through this in our post-public hearing deliberation tonight. Since we're supposed to be closing up here at 10 if we can. Otherwise, then our business would be to table the old business item. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks. That meeting has a subdivision application, not a public hearing. Are we aware of other applications that night? I don't think so. And we just have annual business to do, which shouldn't take us hours. We could potentially table this to our meeting on the 19th, if the commission so wishes. Otherwise, our next meeting would be December 3rd.
Jeff, this is Dave Morse. I move that we table this till our next meeting in 2 weeks.
Yep. So that would be to the 19th. So let me just mark that down. David Morse, you made the motion, and Gail, that was you who seconded it?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion on the table? Hearing none, I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta?
Aye.
Mark Blackmer?
Aye.
Sid Blodgett?
Aye.
Gail Dickinson?
Aye.
Jeff Gordon? Aye. Jeff Marcotte? David Morse?
Aye.
Fred Rich?
Aye.
And Timothy Young?
Aye.
That so passes. This will be taken up as an old business item on our meeting in 2 weeks. That then takes us to agenda item 7. Commissioner Rich, I'm assuming you would wish to make the honors in making the motion.
Move we adjourn.
Second it.
Who was that? Is that Tim?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So motion by Fred Rich, seconded by Tim Young to adjourn. We can't have a discussion on a motion to adjourn, so we'll go right to the roll call. Joe Adeleto?
Aye.
Mark Lackmer?
Aye.
Sid Blodgett?
Aye.
Will Dickinson?
Aye.
Jeff Gordon? Aye. Jeff Marcotte?
Aye.
David Morse?
Aye.
Fred Rich?
Aye.
And Timothy Young?
Aye.
That so passes. We are so adjourned at 9:57 PM. I wish to thank the applicants and representatives for being here tonight and working with us. I also want to thank once again members of the public who have been attending our meetings, including tonight, and providing us correspondence, letters, and emails. We always appreciate on anything we do input from the public. And so thank you for that. And of course, the thank yous to our staff throughout this entire process. Just so that way the public understands our meeting in 2 weeks. This is an old business item now. So you're going to see the commission alone deliberate and discuss and then decide when it wishes to take a vote one way or the other on this matter. But we will stand adjourned. Have a good night, everybody, and please stay safe.